didn't want us at the first screening because they didn't want anybody to know that it was going to be Blair.
When they screened the movie, you know, obviously we weren't allowed to go near the screening because Lionsgate thought that us being there obviously would have given it away. Not that anybody would have recognized us. And even in for the badges for Comic-Con, they made up last names for us. So I was like Ed Miller or something like that.
It's like major secrecy going on, and it was like CIA, clearance in order for us to read the talking point notes and whatnot.
They were like, you can't tell your friends that you're coming to Comic-Con. You can't tell people to come meet you there.
Because they didn't want anybody looking at the thing and saying, oh, Ed Sanchez is going to be here, Dan Meyer, Greg Hale. This is going to be some kind of Blair Witch thing.
I'd never been to Comic-Con, so I wanted to go down and see that. And I also wanted to see this reveal that Lionsgate was going to do, because to me, on paper, it seemed like a great idea. Like a really good idea, and I wanted to see how they were going to pull it off. I got there early, and I was walking around, and I saw all these posters, and I saw the theater, and then I walked a little bit further, there was a poster, and I saw wrapped around the entire, theater area, the line went forever. And I was like, oh, this is a good sign. I'm like, this is gonna be a good crowd, And, went into the theater and they had a big, huge sign, the woods and everything. And I'm like, okay, I think they're gonna change these by the time we get out. But I wasn't sure because I didn't talk to anybody specifically, about how they were gonna do it. And there was a lot of signage to switch out. And but in the theater, we started with the Woods title card.
When it was called The Woods, was still something that people were looking forward to because, Simon and Adam have a following and, they know they deliver. So I think there's a lot of people that were already looking forward to it. But then you add that, no, The Woods is now a Blair Witch sequel.
The marketing angle of it's so tied into the name, that people went into the theater with the Woods posters all lined around the block, and then they came out of the theater and they had discreetly, switched them out for Blair Witch ones. So it was one of those things just magically changed over,
Well, and it's not just that. It's like Lionsgate changed the website, all the social media accounts, the IMDb page, and in theaters all over the country, I think they've been switching out the posters. So we have the Woods poster that now is the Blair Witch poster, and I think it's part of why people are so excited, is just because that's such a unique surprise.
And when we all walked out, everything was switched, and all of a sudden everybody was taking. Now we can take pictures. Now we can talk about it. It was freeing, It was a great night.
You just were the first audience to watch Blair Witch. I'm Jen Yamato. I'm a reporter and critic for The Daily Beast, and I would like to bring down our special guests. We have the filmmakers in person. So we're going to just go through a little bit of chatter, because I'm sure some people have questions. So we're going to open it up to a Q&A towards the end, and then we have another surprise for you.
Are they on?
Guys, the biggest question on my mind, the biggest question I'm sure on everybody's mind is, how the hell did you keep this secret?
Well, no, it's really crazy because, we always knew that eventually the movie was going to be called The Blair Witch, or Blair Witch, and, but we had to condition ourselves so much to not ever say those words out loud, so it feels really good to finally be able to just be like, Blair Witch, Blair Witch, Blair Witch, Blair Witch, Blair Witch. We'd be in public and you're like, talking about it, and it's like, you just don't say the words. You're like, the BW,
Can you share with us some of those Easter eggs that we might have missed the first time?
No, I think the fun of the whole the Blair Witch thing, for me, watching the first movie is just trying to kind of put together everything you saw and didn't see, and so that was the experience we were trying to recreate with this film more than anything, especially when it comes to actually having something in the woods that the characters are seeing. Is it the witch? Is it something else? And we knew that we had to kind of up the ante. We couldn't just make another film where the characters see absolutely nothing, but we wanted to give the feeling that you're seeing something, knowing that when people are going to have this movie on Blu-ray and stuff, they're going to freeze frame all the images of that, and we wanted to make sure that it was vague enough in the way that you see it, so that it doesn't spoil whatever your interpretation of it would be, you know, and that kind of thing.
I like that also rewards the hardcore nerds the most.
Well, that's what we are. I mean, I think actually like we should say this. Like, as soon as Jason and Anita at Lionsgate were telling us about the movie, like they were like, you know, and there was that one serial killer, and Adam's just like Rustin Parr, and they're like, yeah. Like you know,
I spent a lot of time researching the Blair Witch stuff when it came out, like
In
spending a
1999?
lot of like wasted time on the.
not wasted. I mean, wasted until you were hired until like years later you ended up making this film, and then it was time.
And then I
really
could
well
finally
spent.
justify it.
Yeah.
How many times have you guys, would you estimate, have you seen the original Blair Witch?
You know, I've only seen it like 3 or 4 times. Or no, probably like 5 or 6.
Yeah, I saw it like about 6 times when it came out, and then I hadn't seen it for quite a few years after that, you know, and then because I guess like at a certain point, like I started thinking like maybe I don't like the Blair Witch because you know there was like kind of like backlash after a while. Like when it came out, I was like super into it, and then it was like, oh, well, that's like a found footage thing, whatever. And then all these found footage movies came out over the years, and you know, and then it wasn't only until we got, you know, talking about possibly doing this thing that Simon and I sat down and watched it again. So that was like the first time since basically high school since I'd seen it. And it was like, damn, this really holds up, you know, it's actually really scary, and its total commitment to realism is really what makes it work. And you know, and some people complain about the shaky camera work in the first film and stuff, but you know, that's the reason the movie works at all, is because it's so realistic that the characters don't even bother filming each other when they're arguing and stuff, you know? It's like those scenes of them arguing and it's just filming their feet. I mean, that's exactly what would happen if you were in the woods, lost, and holding a video camera, you know? Like, you wouldn't frame things up, you know? But for us, you know, in this film, it was an interesting challenge because, you know, we knew that, like, we couldn't do that again, you know, like there's just no point to it, and like, you know, there's been plenty of knockoffs that have done that, and there's nothing to it, you know. So for us, it was more like trying to find a way to make the found footage thing really work for us, you know, like so that we were, you know, making sure that the characters were always filming, but you weren't thinking about why they were filming. So that the earpiece cam was like Simon's brilliant idea, and you know, being able to just like make sure that, you know, it's found footage, yes, but you're never thinking about like why are they still filming, you know, and that's like the biggest challenge of any of this stuff. And you know, but like, you know, we wanted to give the kind of experience of almost like a haunted hayride, you know, through the Blair Witch woods. You know, we wanted like the last act of this film to just be this relentless kind of Texas Chainsaw, like never-ending kind of like you're just in the Blair Witch Project, and you know, that was kind of the whole, you know, idea behind it.
I mean, when we went back, Adam and I went back and revisited the first film, and it's amazing how well it holds up. But then you look back, and I mean, the found footage kind of subgenre fad didn't really take off until Paranormal Activity, and we also have Steve Schneider and Jason Blum in the audience tonight. But like, they were the ones who really like set it off in a way that people were like, oh, okay, this is like, I understand what this is now. When the original came out, people were like, well, I was that real? Oh, it wasn't? Oh, well, now I'm mad. And so finding a way post all the paranormal ripoffs, and you know, we did the first 2 VHS films together. We worked on those, and you know, finding a way post all that to try to go back and split the difference between that authenticity that the first film nails, that Adam was just saying, and also having it look kind of cool. And we should give a shout out to our cinematographer Robbie Baumgartner, who's also in the audience tonight. Yeah, it was really about that. It was about how do we make this feel real enough that you can still turn off your brain and enjoy it, but also like, you know, it doesn't have to be the characters filming their feet for like 10 minutes straight.
Well, Keith and Jess, from a producerial standpoint, what are the risks of even attempting a found footage movie in like 2016?
I think that's something we were all nervous about going into it, because it's territory that's been covered a lot, and very well, and also very badly. And I think that our biggest fear was making something that felt like the rest of them. And I think we had to have long conversations about like, okay, well, what are we doing that's going to make it feel different and make it feel fresh and make it feel like you're getting the best side of the found footage, so you have a sort of a visceral reality to it, but like actually able to make sure you're actually shooting the key story points, you know what the hell's going on half the time, and making sure that you kind of, I don't know, that you're seeing characters' faces when you need to, but being able to like really sit in first person longer than I think a lot of the found footage movies do now. I think that was kind of a big part for us towards the end, in particular of the film. So like that first person feeling like you're in the ride itself was, I don't know, it was always something we all felt.
But you know,
Wait, I just wanted to quickly do a shout out to our actors because
Yeah.
A lot of them actually wore the camera and did a lot of the camera work
That's true.
themselves.
Yeah.
And I feel like that added to a lot of like
Yeah, James
how real it
especially.
feels.
Yeah,
Yeah,
James
James
almost
and-
filmed his entire segment at the very
In
end
the
of
house.
the movie. Yeah, in the house when he's running through it, and it's. I was actually just thinking about it when we were watching it just this time through. I was like, damn, James did a really good job, like looking at the
Yeah.
right things and moving at the right times. I mean, of course we did like 200 takes, right, James? But
Well, we figured, I mean, you know, on the VHS films, which made people very nauseous, but we'd experiment with that weird eye line thing where it's like one character, the characters are having a conversation, but they're looking at like the chest of a person who has a camera on their head to make the eye lines match and stuff. But it was interesting because we got very lucky that our actors on this film just had an instinct for that. James and Brandon and everyone kind of had to spend their time in the rig.
It's a heavy
it-
rig. It's like 50 pounds.
It's heavy,
so-
yeah.
What does
It's
it look like? What is this rig?
it was a big fucking helmet. And a big backpack that you wear, and
Yeah.
And sometimes they had lights on, like Robbie rigged up kind of a light system, so sometimes they'd be lighting the other actor with a kind of a light panel on their chest. And yeah, I mean, it was a heavy thing to be stomping around the woods in for sure. But they would volunteer to wear it just to make the performances easier for the other actors because at least then they'd be interacting with an actor as opposed to an actor standing over the shoulder of a camera operator, which is even harder.
Well, and this was the absolute most difficult fucking thing I've ever directed too, because like you have almost like no control over it in some ways, and you're kind of making these incremental changes through takes. So whenever you're doing a scene, you can only do one camera at a time, and it has to stay true with the blocking that the actors are doing. So you have to constantly remember like which way are they looking in this scene, and that dictates where the camera's looking, and and then so each take you have to kind of go through the whole sequence, and then you tweak it every time. So like by around like take 7 or 8, you're just now kind of figuring out all the beats, and then once you finally get it, then it's about getting the more of like the timing down, and then trying to figure out like what other which other cameras do we need in this sequence, and it was always like a race against time too, because you're out in Vancouver, and it's you have like these 6-hour-long nights, and of course we're in the woods at nighttime, shooting True Dark and everything, and yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't recommend doing a found footage movie, honestly.
We have a question right over here on the right.
Hello? Oh, sorry.
Your mic's word.
Okay, it's actually 2 small questions. The first one is, when you guys were in the woods, did you guys have any complications with the vegetation, like, poison oak or anything like that? And then the second one, with the equipment you said that went on the head, I know the Oculus is the actual VR thing, but is it related to that at all?
Well, just to speak to that one real quick, like I mean, the head rig that we had basically is essentially like in the movie they just had these tiny little earpiece cameras that they're wearing, and if you actually filmed with one of those, I mean, it looks like a Sega CD or something like that. It doesn't look very good. And so we wanted to give it like this kind of high-tech cool look to it that wasn't distracting to look at. And so the way to do it is we found the smallest cameras that we possibly could, and that looked just good enough, and just bad enough at the same time. And basically we had to go from, there was 2 different cameras that we mainly used for that rig, and there was one that was really good in daytime, and then there was one that was really good for nighttime footage. And one was slightly bigger than the other, one was more glitchy than the other. They all had like terrible problems, and because it was all basically experimental stuff that we were dealing with, and and Robbie was constantly trying to like stay ahead of all those things, and but ultimately it was basically like a helmet that you would wear, and the camera was kind of attached. One of them, it was basically like the camera was almost like in front of the actor's face, so it was this Sony A7S was the nighttime one that you see a whole lot in here, and so the actors could actually see what they were looking at here, which is probably even more distracting, because I think there was like a slight delay on it, wasn't there? But so they're basically sitting there like this, and then there's like a little backpack that had like you know, all the recording stuff in it and all that stuff. And the hardest part for the actors, though, was just having to constantly look into a lens, and I always felt bad for them, you know, because, you know, not only are you acting against a camera, but you're also acting into a mirror where you can see yourself and constantly be like, am I doing this right? You know. I don't know. You guys want to take this Woods question thing?
Yeah, I mean, we were all careful and didn't step in poison
We
oak.
also had the best greens team.
Yeah, we had an amazing
greens
greens team.
that would come in and clear the area and make
Yeah,
sure everyone would
and
listen.
they would come through and tell us like,
Yeah.
this tree no one should touch
Don't
because it
touch
might
that.
fall on you. And then they were great, and they did all like the Twilight movies. And,
Well, yeah, and you don't even, like, before you go into it, you don't even think about how complicated that is, where you're like, you know, it's like you need enough of a trail where the characters can walk through, but not so much that it looks like a walking trail. And then you walk over it a million times, and then it's like suddenly looks like people have walked over it. And so then, you know, these guys are constantly going in there and redoing stuff. And, you know, so it was more like that was like the hassle than actual problems. I don't think anybody ever got injured, strangely.
No. The
With
biggest
all the running through the woods.
Yeah, I mean, the trickiest thing in the woods, which is logical in retrospect, is just that it's really hard to have paths that are only for the movie because the crew want to walk on them, and then suddenly they become huge.
Yeah.
Because you have hundreds of people walking down paths over and over again.
Yeah.
So that actually is weirdly one of the biggest challenges, is just having your camera stuff separate from your logistical stuff.
I was bit by a mosquito.
We have time for one more question from the audience before we
geez.
actually give you one last treat. So I think we had one right here near the aisle. I don't know where our microphone went. Oh, there she is. She's wonderful.
Yeah, I just first of all want to say it's a huge honor to see this film. I saw the previous two, and actually what's really surprised me about this film was back when I was in middle school, I picked up a copy of one of the books, the Blair Witch books, and there was an insert in the back of the book entering some sort of contest or something for the setting of Blair Witch 3, and I've waited.
Oh my God, you're the guy. I mean, I didn't mean literally tell us, but I'm glad you are.
Discovered that
Movie, to come out, and I was starting to think it was never going to happen. And then when I saw the preview for The Woods, I said, "That's got to be it." I said,
So
"I'm
let's just
flying to
pretend that-
California," and I said, "That's got to be
That's so
it."
fun, because so when we should talk about this. So we should talk about these books quickly, because we didn't really know the books all existed.
I mean,
and we found out and got them all when we were editing the film.
I'd read like the dossier and the comics, and now James and I have chatted about some of these recently. But yeah, I mean, it was like there were all these weird young adult Blair Witch novels that were published mostly in Europe. And like, so we ordered them. I didn't want to read them like when we were actually putting the movie together, because I didn't want to like have these nonsense ideas. I wanted to stay true to like what was canon, which was like the first film. But then we flipped to the back, and it's like, visit the set of Blair Witch 3. We're like, oh no, we boned someone.
Yeah, and so we contacted Lionsgate, and we're like, someone is going to bring this up and be like, I was supposed to visit the set.
And the contest,
and the first screening, someone brings it up. That's amazing.
The contest deadline was like October of 2000.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I guess if you got your thing in there, like this is kind of it for that. So that literally no one else is like entertained by this now, but we're like so excited about this last question. We're like, that was like the best last question for us, and I'm sorry to the audience.
Like ever, yeah.
So thank you guys for coming out.
Everything has been easier. You know, one, being friends with Adam and Simon. Then they write a good script. Then they make a good movie. Then it's a good reaction to the movie. It's pretty easy, you know, to be like, this is fun.
You know, they approached it with gusto, and that's what Blair Witch is. And I think that's where, you know, we share a kind of a common bond with those guys, is that they just said, you know what, fuck it, we're gonna go for it, and we're gonna do it. And it was a lot of fun. And that's, at the end of the day, what you want as an audience member. You just want to go in and have a good time, be scared, and come out and feel like, you know, you got worked over, you know, with a horror movie.
And I always tell people, I'm like, you know, it's not like the original film. You know, it's a different film, but I feel that like this was that Blair Witch is really the sequel that our movie deserved. I love the filmmakers they chose. I love the script, and I really love the way that they're kind of rolling it out.
I don't think any one of us, Simon, Adam, Tom, the producers, really wanted to have sort of a standard found footage film. It felt good to see the final product and feel in my heart that we achieved that. And so it was to me that alone is a huge success.
I think that Adam's made and everybody involved was so wonderful to work with. And we had such a good time making this film, really and truly.
This feels special. It feels like, this doesn't feel like a typical movie that I've been on. In my limited experience, I haven't worked on something that has had this much heart. And you don't really see that, I think, in a lot of horror movies.
It's creepy. There's so many nods to the original. It's just, I think this one's sleeker, possibly scarier, I'll even say.
I think to this day, when I walk in a room, I'm afraid that someone's like just staring in a corner, because that's what's scary. I mean, like someone unresponsive staring in a corner, why?
This movie's given me just recurring nightmares. It's really strange. You don't really get out of here unscathed, even when you're wrapped.
You know, we tried to make a movie that is like a classic horror film in the sense that it's a pure experience, and by that I mean that we wanted you to come in with a certain set of expectations and just leave with your mind completely melted by the kind of non-stop thrills that we're throwing at you. And it's also the kind of movie that I'm hoping that we're throwing a lot of stuff into that we're not explaining, and that audience members will talk about it afterwards and try to kind of come up with their own theories in the same way that the first film did. And because I think it's really important that everybody have a different perspective on what's going on. Even if you feel like maybe if you're with 4 people and 3 of you saw something in the woods and the last one didn't, and one of you thinks that the lights at the end of the film is one thing, and to me it's important that this is a film where you walk away talking about it and theorizing about it, and that's the spirit of the Blair Witch Project in general anyways.